Okay. So for our story last week, Jury of Her Peers, there were about 10 questions, and I've started reading them, and it's lengthy because it's taken me a while to read them. Hey. What I'm seeing from the ones that I've read, and we didn't have a real lengthy discussion on that story. We had such a huge one on the other one that some of you missed that. So anytime that you have a question and you don't understand what they're asking of you, and you can't remember what we had, or you don't remember it from the story, what would be a wise thing to do? Check the video if you want to. If you aren't here, check the video. But if you don't have the video, what would you do? If you've looked at the video, you sat in class, you still don't have an understanding of the message of this thing, what would GTS? You've got to do some research. If it says, what is the message? Why did you Google that? I mean, people were coming up with things that is not the message. Where did you even get that from? The message has a lot to, you need to Google that. I'm not telling. So when we're doing the questions this week, also some people are still not citing properly. You're not citing enough. You're doing it properly, but you're not citing every source and explaining it. A lot of times you're just still doing one sentence and then you cite a source, and you're letting that source answer the question. In other words, you're letting the passage that you cited answer the question. That's not how it works. You answer the question with a discussion first. And if I were you, I would Google every last one of them to make sure you are somehow understanding what is going on. When it asks, the one question I'll talk about the one question that asked you, which we didn't talk about this in class. I expected that you would Google this because it's what's under the analysis. The question that asked you, what about the women's names? Well, what was the significance of the women's names?
There was no individuality.
There was one woman's name who was mentioned, her first and her last name.
Martin.
Why was she mentioned both first and last name? And why were the rest just Mrs. name? Now, so you don't know. So we didn't get to it. We didn't talk about that. What would be a good thing to do?
Yeah, when I Googled it gave me an example like Martha, who was the president's wife.
Yeah, sure.
Strong individual.
Right. Yes. How great is that? It took you 2 seconds. She had a first and a last name. Why? Because she was strong. She was a strong woman. She was verbal. So the author recognized her both names. The other lady, Mrs.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Why did she not have a first name? Somebody mentioned it earlier.
Well, it was Minnie Foster, right? But
Yeah.
Then it was like Minnie, right?
Yeah, that's in significance as well too. Her name has a significance. Martha Hale, whatever her name was, some Hale names, whatever had it, and so did Mrs. Peterson. She was a Mrs. though. Why is she a Mrs.?
Because it was a man's world. Yeah.
She's a minor, kind of wimpy woman. She just went along. She had nothing. There was no reason to call her by name. It just showed her weaknesses.
Just called her Sheriff Peters or Sheriff
White or Mrs. whatever. Yeah, and so she had no real strength in the story whatsoever. So some character analysis. I would have just Googled character analysis. Why the character's named this. You know, it would help you. I'm not saying you can't do it. I like you to read it first. And then and figure out what you can first. But once you put your initial thoughts down, then it's okay to do some research. I think I said on everybody's thus far, you should have researched this, particularly message. Why didn't you look it up?
I was scared.
Yeah, well,
The exact question that you asked is on the internet, so that's why I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you forgot, you told me before you
To Google.
You said don't Google that first day. You said,
No, I said first. I said, don't Google them first.
That's all I.
Read them, figure out the best way you can to answer them, and then do your research. I didn't want you to Google the story and not read it. And because a lot of people can Google up the analysis and read the summary. As a matter of fact, I just told my grandson to do that. He was late doing something. I told him to do what I preached not to do because it was like 5 minutes before his class started and he had read all the stories. I said, Google up the summary really quick and look at the analysis and go. And he was getting ready, but I tell you all not to do that. We have plenty of time. Don't wait till the last minute. But yes, but sometimes in pinch situations, and we didn't have pinch situations, you have plenty of time to read this story. Then we discuss it in class. And then the discussion board's not due till 4 or 5 days later. So you have weeks to read it, listen to the discussion. You know, he didn't have that. He had a few days to read 170 pages, and he read as much as he could. It was on the last one. So I had him hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. So you can at least read one and won't get a 0. Know something about it as you ask it. But that's not the purpose what we have here. Because our intent is to discuss all of these stories, to analyze them, to look at them from a literary standpoint and see and check them out. So yeah, so anyway, so far on Jury of Her Peers, I've not been overly impressed with what I'm reading so far. So I don't know if you didn't get the gist of the fact of why she read it or wrote it, but I would look that up after you have gotten your initial concepts and ideas and thoughts. Yes, but you're right, Ron, I sure did say don't read it
So
before you read the story. You're right.
whatever it said, I didn't drop it out. Because I was like, I was trying to think like you think. So whatever it said, I wrote something.
But see, I was kind of like wrong because I read the story and I was like, when I Googled it and it had different answers, I was like, well, if I put this in there, she's going to know I didn't get this interpretation of this. So I'm just going to put what I got and leave it alone because she's going to know I Googled it.
No, exactly what you asked.
I'm good as long as you can support it with what you have from the story. But now some of you all are doing, at this juncture, how many have we done? What is this, week 8 midterm? Yeah. I ask a bunch of questions and you all just answer it. I don't see any insight beyond that. You just answered it.
Well, I promise you, there's a big more out there.
You just go, her name was Miss Peters and the other lady didn't have a name, so she just went, and that was it. I'm like, well, what is that? Where's the insight? Why is that the case? So you're not explaining it. Or you're using a quote without explaining it. So you still gotta use that quote. So some are doing exceptionally, but for Jury of Her Peers, I'm not happy. I'm hoping I'll change because I haven't read that many yet, but I'm hoping I'm going to change. I'm just at the first couple of random ones I'm picking out to read.
Can you make it to where we can edit it?
Now at this juncture, I found out last week that many of them looked so similar. When I had it, and the answers were similar, even though I don't want you looking at anybody else's and then being able to edit your paper once you post. And that's what was kind of happening, I think. I want you to be able to edit if you ask me specifically, and then I can see that you've gone in like after our class discussion, like some people do it before class discussion. Then I will work with you on that, like you posted yours before class discussion on that. And then I'll say, sure, let me let you, because you had class
I
discussion.
didn't need to change mine because we shared last time and I uploaded hers instead of mine, so I had to put mine in the comments.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. That was okay. I saw it on there, but it still needs to go to. I just need to take hers off.
Yeah.
You just need to take hers off because she had already put hers in.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me take it off the.
Yeah, because you couldn't edit it. Yeah. So if you'll notice, I've gone back to not being able to upload the thing until it was. So you can only put yours in and not. So it was just too many of the same ideas, and I didn't get enough like variation. Every other time I've had tons of variation, but last week I just didn't get enough variation, and that was on the House of Usher. And I know it was hard to do, and it's kind of difficult. But, yeah, I got a lot of the same kinds of thoughts on things. So anyway, so I went back to, going on and making sure that, and I don't mind that you do read other people's, I don't mind that, I just don't want you to use their ideas and gather ideas from them. But it is helpful for you to read what other people do say about it. And that way it'll help you grow. But once you've submitted your paper, then you've got to be done. So I'm hoping that the videos help. I'm hoping that class discussions help. But I do want to say one other thing, end on a positive note, that your journals are, most everyone is getting better every time, and that's what I expect. There are a few people who are still doing the same thing they've done since day one and changed hardly any, sometimes even less. But that you've just got to work it out. I'm going to grade harder. I'm going to grade stricter because we only have one. And I have a high expectations for that one. So just putting one sentence down is not going to satisfy me, nor is not putting citations. So you've got to have the citations inside of there to approve of it, for me to approve or to be good. And as semester goes on, I expect better every week, not the same. So pay attention to my comments that I give you each week. It's just a way for me to give you some ideas on how to improve for next week. And I see improvement, and I thank you for that. My heart beats very excitedly when I see students that have start out with just one sentence, and then they've gone on to whole big paragraphs, very insightful paragraphs at that. And you know who you are, because I always write little notes on your paper about that. So you can pat yourself on the back anytime you feel like it. Be glad about it. So, but anyway, yes, very thankful. But anyway, that's what happened with jury of the peers. And I just wanted to clear this up because I think I've written it on everybody's. It's okay to do research after you've read your story and look at, and I would certainly look up. Don't just look up one source on what the message is. Look up several sources and find out what they believe, because you have literary analysts and they have all different ideas and views. And if anything that's, then you'll feel good about what you think the message was. So good job. All right, anybody else? Okay. All righty, Haley and Caitlin. You want to come on and plug yours in, and I will share the screen. Thank you. Just put your paper up on the top left staple, all right over there on the left.
I wonder if you might.
You read it. I commented on
I
it.
want to be too bad, but you got that's all mine. This is my book.
You happy with yourself? Are you excited and happy with yourself? Hey, Ron, I bragged on you last class. I said I had an older gentleman that went in to read their book. And the students were so excited. He did such a great job. They wanted you to come back, and the children just were so attentive. And they were just loving on him and asking him all kinds of questions.
Summaries
I'd love
first.
to see him and read a book.
Summaries first.
Yes. Well, I don't think she has to pull up the summary. She hasn't printed out.
She hasn't printed it out. So what do we want to
Just go ahead and pull up
Are you
your
still in the class? Did you check?
online. I think so.
Oh, you're online.
online? Yeah, I have to.
Oh, that's who you are. Because I was going, who are you? I couldn't even think. Kansas.
Yep.
Yes,
That's right.
that's it. All right. I knew you were coming today. Welcome. Because I was going,
Who was that person?
who is
over there
that
sitting?
person? I kept thinking, are you in this class? And I'm like, oh, I've already dropped her. I didn't know which one you got.
Yeah. Okay.
So
You want to start
Yeah,
with
just
mine or
click
start with?
You pull them all up at one time
Yeah,
and then
that's
flip
right.
between them.
Okay. I'll do that. So let's introduce
And then we'll minimize them and then share the screen. You're doing so good. Been bragging. And you can't take it, can you?
you might want to zoom out a little bit.
I don't care. You do it on the same person.
There.
You want to read her?
Ooh, that's gonna bug me. What is that? Huh?
Oh, no.
No, she ain't going it the way. Yes, do. She can't put anything on it.
It wasn't bad. I did.
I'm kidding. All right, so So, share the, you don't have to necessarily, to share screen.
Sure, I'm gonna minimize this one quick. Are you remember which one it is? Yeah. So if I X out of that.
I'm gonna share screen, Haley. I'm hoping I find hers to share. Which one? Who's who?
Oh,
There's data put names.
That one's first.
both.
We're doing O.
Well, the other ones aren't pulled up yet. This one.
Y'all don't have to.
Here, y'all do.
Y'all don't have to pull the summaries up, 'cause I gotta print it off.
Well, see, that's what I said. So mine.
I got yours up. I got mine up. And I got the other summary up. Where's the other summary one?
Well, she said she doesn't need to pull the
She
summaries
wants
up.
them up and others.
Oh, gotcha. So
this
I guess it's just summaries.
Let's
Yeah.
do, everyday use first. We doing everyday use? Because that's the one we
Okay.
have our discussion, our question.
Go back to,
See my comments?
yeah, no, for y'all's pages up.
Yeah, this is.
Is that
So I got
hers or
I got
yours?
two. Okay, so which one should I go off of? I guess we just go off of this one first.
Which one was that?
Alice Walker, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's already pulled up.
You said I thought it was. I didn't know that.
Everyday use.
Okay.
Yeah, do that one first, because that's our discussion. I don't want us to get so wrapped up in the Warren path that we don't get to it. Like last time, then y'all's journals are all looking crazy.
So we're doing everyday use first?
Yes, please.
So, everyday use is a short story by Alice Walker set in Georgia in the 1960s.
Can you hear Haley?
No, I didn't even know anyone was talking.
Okay, hold on, let me get the microphone over.
Did I get closer to the computer? No, she's.
You can, but I'll move the mic so that you can do. I'll move it so you actually the star.
Don't do that. You put more.
That way you get see. She'll see you right there. See.
Okay.
Come this way. You can come on up. There you go.
You'll see a side view, but it's cute.
Can y'all hear me?
I can now.
Yeah.
Just making sure. All right, so Everyday Use is a short story by Alice Walker set in Georgia in the 1960s. Mama is the main character with the story told primarily from her point of view. She has two daughters, Maggie and Dee. Dee is the older daughter, and there is not much information about her until she arrives. She is coming home for a visit, which is the main point of the story. When she arrives, she is dressed in flowing traditional clothing and is in the company of a man named Hakeem, a barber. There is a lot of tension between everyone in the story when Dee gets home, mainly to do with the few quilts that Mama has promised Maggie for a wedding gift. Dee looks down on her upbringing but wants the quilts along with some other family objects to take home with her. Maggie hears Dee ask for the quilts, and assuming that Mama has favored Dee over her in the past and will continue to do so, she gets angry and leaves. Dee takes the quilts and tries to reason with Mama that Maggie will use the quilts every day, and this is not how it is meant to be. They are meant to be put on a rack for display and never used. At this point, Mama realizes the negative impact Dee has had on their lives. She stands up for Maggie and demands the quilts back, as Maggie will appreciate them much more. Maggie sees Mama do this, and Dee leaves with her husband/boyfriend, but without the quilts.
And you don't read so much. You want to talk to us.
Okay. I was getting confused reading it off the paper.
Tell us the story rather than.
All right, so I combined the two sheets into one bigger sheet. So the first one is the characters. So Mama's the first character, the most important one. She's a strong woman who seems to have raised her two daughters as a
Just
single
forward a
mother.
little bit because you're soft spoken.
Was herself raised in a farm environment, and her house burned down in a fire when the children were young, and that's how Maggie got the scars on her legs. Maggie's the younger daughter who was burned in the house fire when she was a child, and she has a lot of practical skills like quilting and seems to have a true sense of family, unlike her sister Dee, who changed her name, and she's Mama's older daughter. She's educated, kind of pretentious, and either in a relationship or married to Hakeem and Barbara. We don't find out which. And that's Dee's husband or boyfriend, and he might be Muslim since he won't eat pork, and he seems to view Mama and Maggie as quaint cultural artifacts rather than human beings.
Yeah.
So he's the only static character, and then I put the rest of them down as round characters because we kind of know a lot about them.
And we don't really know as much.
about Mama. Mama's
It's Mama and Dee. We know a lot about Dee because she's doing a lot of talking and Mama, but Maggie's just kind of around. So we only know what we know through them because she doesn't say much in the whole thing to express herself. They're kind of describing and defining her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's set in rural Georgia in the like 60s or 70s. It's hot, humid summertime, and it's the social conditions is it's the deep south, so it's oppressive towards African Americans of that time. The mood or atmosphere is kind of Mama wanting a good reunion with Dee, but knowing that that's probably not going to happen since Dee is embarrassed by her family and her home. It's told in the first person point of view, and the plot conflict is between Dee, Maggie, and Mama because Mama promised Maggie the family quilts for her wedding present, but Dee says that Maggie will use them every day and ruin them. But Dee wants to hang them on display so they won't get ruined, and then Dee tries to take the quilts forcefully, but Mama stands up for Maggie and takes the quilts back, and then it makes Dee angry and she leaves with her husband.
Yeah, now I do want to say one other thing, that it is not necessarily first person, because that would mean this story was about the author.
Narrative?
But it isn't, it's a story she's made up, but it is using the characters are talking and that kind of thing. So as the narrator, it's not first person narrator because it's not about the author. It's not a story about the author.
About the author, okay.
She's writing a story about other characters.
Okay. So what is that considered?
In this case, it's still going to be third person because it's not about her, it's about other people.
Okay.
But the narrator, because the narrator seems to be all-knowing, we kind of know
all of it,
everything. So it's called third person omniscient,
okay,
which we haven't really talked about that, but yes, means she's all-knowing. The narrator knows the whole story and knows what's behind it. She knows each character. That's how we get to know each character. And so that's all in third person omniscient, meaning all-knowing.
So for the conflicts, I put man versus self, psychological, and man versus society, social.
And why?
Man versus self because it's a psychological conflict with Mama and the two daughters, but kind of Mama with herself about who she wants to give the quilts to and the fact that she's probably kind of let Dee do whatever she wants her whole life. Maybe favored her over the other one a bit.
And she's so who's the one against themselves?
Mama.
I'm not sure it's let's look at this a little bit. Let's look at our conflict, girls. What do y'all think? So talk about man versus society, because that's a huge one. That's our main.
The main one. Dee, when she leaves, she kind of drops her whole heritage that she grew up with and embraces the more African roots thing.
Right.
And then she comes back and flaunts it even though they don't know anything about it. And it's
Right. So what's this about? What's in society that she's speaking out against?
The civil rights movement.
Yeah, she's more preaching for civil rights. I mean, she's more moved into that civil rights mode. But what is it that she's actually against? She's not against oppression. She hasn't really.
Original identity.
Because
Yeah.
More educated.
I mean, so saying the oppression of her identity.
Yeah, she's against her culture, her identity, who she is. She is claimed an African name, and she's not African.
African American.
Yeah, she's not African. She's changed an African name, and she's not African. So she's not Muslim. She's completely denied her mother, her culture, her growing up, her home, her roots. Thank you, the word I was trying to use. So she completely shucked her roots and just shamed her. And she's claiming herself as, but yet what does she think of the quilt?
that she wants the quilts.
Yeah, why does she want those?
Because she feel like it's part of her family heritage.
She don't care about the heritage.
It's a trophy.
It's old.
She's gonna show off like these are my people made these things. She's not the
My family.
yeah. She's not about the hard work, what they did and how they made it and that kind of thing. Yeah, which ends up in the long run is why the sister gets them, because She actually appreciates them. She has value to them. The girl just wants to show a show.
Yeah,
She's all about the show. Dee Dee is all about the show. She's about the show of, you know, hey, I'm going to claim I'm this, but it's all show. But she's completely shucked out her roots of who she really is, and she's putting on some show now, claiming she is something she's not. Yes. That's why the quilts don't really mean anything to her. And her sister Dee and all that. Yeah, so that's a good point. She is kind of fighting society and the views of society as they are, as who she is from her roots. And remember, our author is African-American author.
She wrote The Color Purple.
Yeah, she wrote The Color Purple, and she wrote lots of other things. Alice Walker. There's a lot of other things. Yeah, and most of what Alice Walker does write about does revolve around some of these issues where people, you know, trying to be more than what they are, acting like they're something that they're not, something like that. I don't know their exact terms. We'll look it up. But yes, perfect. Now, the personal conflict with, yeah, who would be the personal conflict with them? Not the society, but if you're going to say man versus man or whatever, or man versus self. Because Mama does Mama ever deny herself?
No.
Does Maggie?
No.
Who's denying this?
Dee.
So what is she struggling with?
Herself,
Her identity.
person self.
Yeah. I think she's struggling in her, I don't, you know, you probably could prove otherwise, but I think that's a huge thing, is she's the one that's somehow struggling.
She's the only one, right?
Yeah, with who the others know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to say man versus man, what would you say to that one, if we're going to cover man versus man? D versus who? Her mom. Yeah, because her mother she laughs at her mother and acts how dumb her mother is and how uncouth they are, and, you know, treats them like they don't have good sense. And she's so far above them because she got educated. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, about that educated part.
The structure.
But back in those times.
Yeah, you can say it, Ron.
Just in those times, you know, during the 60s, when you step off like that, it was just really like they had names for that when you step off.
Yeah.
Whatever you do.
You know, that's why, you know, all that's what she's trying to say, they must have thought what it was. They're not related to the
That's right. Yeah, Googling the author a little bit will help you understand what she's trying to say in regards to the author. Yeah. Now she's saying that education is important, but you can't act like you're better and above, and, you know, you still have to understand where you come, who you are, and who your people are, and, you know, not act like they're so uncouth that, you know, that you still have, they played a part in who you are in growing up. As a matter of fact, they gave up everything so she could get
The education.
and suffered and did without for that. Yeah, good job. Thank you, Kansas. All right, go ahead.
So the structure,
Mhm.
the exposition, the characters is 1960s or 70s rural Georgia. The characters are Mama, Dee, Maggie, and Dee's boyfriend or husband. The inciting incident was when they got to Mama's house initially. The rising action is Dee telling Mama Dee is dead and she's changed her name to this African name. Dee takes the family churn top and dasher and requested quilts made by Maggie and the grandmother.
Yeah, I forgot about the churn too. Yeah, that was another one of those things she wanted to
she
put
wanted,
on
yeah.
show.
Mhm.
And they were using this. This is something they used to make butter. This is their livelihood. And she wanted to take it and put it on show.
The climax was when Mama realized that she'd been letting Dee control her and Maggie for years and even favored Dee over Maggie by letting her have what she wanted, and understands that she needs to stand up for them. And the
Yes,
falling
that
action.
was that moment when she
yes.
said no.
Wait, no. Give me those back.
That's right.
The falling action is when Mama hugs Maggie and then snatches the quilts from Dee and puts them into Maggie's arms, since they were hers to begin with. Dee says that Mama and Maggie don't understand how the quilts represent heritage, even though Dee is the one that doesn't understand the concept of heritage.
Yeah, and that irony.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was that
we'll
was
talk-
irony.
Yeah, you'll probably say it in a minute. Hold on, I got to get to it. You'll get to it.
The moment of final suspense was when Dee tried to forcibly take the quilts and Mama snatched them away to give them back to Maggie. And the resolution was when Dee left angry and Maggie smiles and Maggie feels free and validated because Mama stood up for her.
Finally.
the symbols was the quilts and the yard. The quilts because they're like bonds between women of different generations and legacies stitched into the quilts.
Yeah, it's their life, it's the heritage, it's the hard work of the women that came through their generation after generation in order to survive and to live. The hardships they went through all came through those quilts.
She said there was a little square that was from the Civil War uniform. Her great-great-grandpa.
Yeah, can you imagine that, you know, the hard work and the things that were memories and they were pieces of their lives that they were handed down from generation to generation.
Everyday use.
Yeah.
Grandpa wore that Civil War
every day.
Uniform everyday use.
All making them who they are.
Exactly, emancipation.
And the struggles they've gone through. Maybe they haven't been educated. They didn't have the privilege to be educated like Dee had, but they all of their hard work created her privilege.
Exactly.
And then the yard is a private space free of the regret and any personal shortcomings that have infiltrated Mama's life. Like, I think she kind of blamed herself for not being able to keep Maggie from getting burned in the house fire. And not having a really good relationship with Dee, and Dee kind of disowned her family and her heritage, and you can definitely blame yourself for that as a parent.
One question while you're talking about that, as far as the irony goes, and I guess we'll get to it a little bit later on. Remember how Maggie hated their house so much? There was some part in there that she was just hated the house, and she hated where she was. She didn't like anything about her life, and then eventually left it. Do you think she had anything to do with maybe burning the house?
That's a good point.
I saw the house fire as more of an accident, and since there's no male figure mentioned in any of it, that maybe that had something to do with why she hated it. Maybe not so much the house, but what was going on in it, since we don't hear anything about that.
Right, yeah, we don't know anything about a male figure that's not there. We do know that something where she went out behind the tree, and I don't know if you all have it, but she was behind the tree looking at them, looking through, waiting as she had gone back to get Maggie. It's something in there. If y'all find it, let me know where it is. But it's a little section that kind of makes me think funny. What about y'all, Haley? What do you think about that? And Patrick? About her as it relates to maybe having anything to do with burning that house?
Well, we were talking about it before class. He was saying maybe, Dee, or, even in the South back then, it could have been, what did you say? Like Klansmen or something. Who knows?
Well, we don't have anything in the story to lead us to think somebody really did it necessarily.
No, but, speculation never hurt.
Yeah, well, interesting speculation. But it does say something about she looked on Maggie's behind. Okay, Lindsay.
Yeah,
it's too loud.
Sorry. Dee was standing off under the sweet gum tree she had gone out of. Concentration on her face as she watched the last dingy gray board of the house fall in towards the red hot brick chimney. And then it said that they wanted to ask her if she had done it because she hated the house that much.
That's what I was going to say. That's why I think because my mom asked her, why don't you do a dance around the action like she always says.
Has some suspicion.
Yes.
I think that maybe she really did.
Happy down, go ahead.
Yeah, you got exactly right. Yeah, you got what you want. You happy dance gone, it's done. You nearly killed us, And I think she feels some guilt towards Maggie. And there was a couple other things I thought she felt a little guilt because Maggie got burned in it, so that she had some kind of guilt feeling. That might come out somewhere else. I don't have it with me right now to look at it, but if you see something like that where she has any feelings of guilt about Maggie specifically.
What if Maggie said, why did she get burned the first time? How did she get burned the first time?
Because she got it the first time. That's the only time I thought Maggie got it.
Right.
Can I say
Yeah.
I didn't even get it through the way, that Maggie got burnt in the house, because they always want to start talking about Dee with these different adjectives, such as her scar, first her burn scars with Maggie down her arms and leg, I and her sister, mixture, envy and all. And then they go off to say that Dee, she burned her friends, burned us with a lot of knowledge we didn't necessarily need to know. And then there's also another one speaking about heat with, a dress so loud it hurts my eyes, speaking about the colors were as bright as the sun and the heat waves it throws out. Because Dee has a temper and everything, and maybe just that temper, it escalated all through Maggie's life, and that's where, just the all, and then maybe that's why she cowers so much to Dee. It's because of all the abuse that maybe Maggie has had from Dee.
Yeah, I'm sure she's had plenty of abuse, and I think she's a bit scared of her, too. Maybe because she does know she both killed her. I don't know. We don't know those things.
Yeah.
But there's a suspicion that's what she's using those burn adjectives every time that she's describing her.
And her scarred hands and things and scarred.
So she's scarred because through Maggie, and Maggie continues to put her down and continues to. What does she need those books for?
Yeah.
She doesn't know what the meaning of it, whatever. She's everything she ever says about Maggie is
derogatory.
Yeah, it puts a scar there.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
a very good point. Mm-hmm. So maybe she did it initially and continued to do it her whole life.
Yeah, because at the end of the story, it says something about Maggie talking more clear and louder after she left. That means she probably was happy.
Yeah, and feeling that she finally bested. She finally was strong enough. It made her strong enough that Mama believed in me enough to let me have these quilts.
Maggie knows how to quilt.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
when
she
they fall
does.
apart, then she can just fix them and make new quilts.
That's true. Yeah, fix them. That's a good point. Plus, she could make her own because Maggie kept saying, "No worries, I'll make more." Because Dee didn't know any of that stuff.
Exactly, because Maggie was with Grandma Dee and Big Dee who taught her how to quilt herself.
That's
and
right.
that was Maggie's portion. And then, so she didn't need the quilts to see how Grandma had quilted because she was there helping Grandma quilt them.
That's right. So she
While Dee
knows,
was
and
off
that's
doing her
why
thing.
they were. And to her, it was everyday use. The value of them, and as opposed to just being something you put on a
Just a
pedestal
novelty.
and watch, a novelty. I love that word. Yeah.
So the irony was kind of the title and the relation to how Dee would not use the quilts every day.
Yeah.
Dee wants the family heritage quilts as display items when they're intended to be used every day. And if Maggie keeps the quilts, she can mend them when they finally fall apart, and Dee wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that they would forever be used and forever be upkept. And that's very good. Good job. Very good.
And the thesis or main idea, I put division by education and heritage and family. The division by education because Dee is educated more than Mama and Maggie, and it causes her to alienate from her heritage. Maggie, who has no education, is more appreciative of the family quilts as they're meant to be used.
Right. That's right.
And heritage and family because Dee rejects the legacy of her given name and heritage through her mother's family in favor of an African name and culture that she doesn't know much about and flaunts it to her family to make them feel.
Yeah, so that was quite, and she was educated about that, and she did feel above all that. But the thing is she grasped a culture she didn't know about and turned away from a culture
she did know
that she lived and knew and loved, the people she loved for whatever reason.
She sat down and filled her belly, didn't she?
Yeah. The interesting is, why did she do that, do you think?
Sit down and eat?
No, to educate, separate herself in that way. What about her, or what about, you think, even maybe during that time if education was a part of it, what is Alice Walker actually saying about that? About how that division of education, and is she approving of it? Why would she talk negative about education?
She's approving the education, but not the acting like you're superior just because you have it. Because there's other things more important.
She's getting educated, but she disagrees with the way she's treating her family.
Yeah, and that still goes on.
She disagrees with how she feels about that woman's self-worth now.
Just because you educated like you better.
Well, you're better in certain ways, but you've got to always remember your roots. These people that made you, put you where you are and got you through so that you could get that education, not to turn your backs on them. Now, she wasn't asking her to go back to that kind of life, but to act as if she was but I don't know.
She was just acting like you got here, but don't forget how you got here.
Right. That's right. I think so
We
too.
sacrificed. We made.
Yeah.
We was the roots to meet this tree.
And she's the one that had the goals and the desires to move up and out of that situation and to have a better life for herself. And she's not criticizing that. Is Alice Walker criticizing that? No, she's honoring you did. You got this great education. You moved forward. You moved out of this, you have more opportunities now. But in so doing, don't forget the people, the hard work, and the what went before you wasn't easy. And the people suffered for you to have these things that you have today. We tell that to our children all the time. Remember when I came along, we walked 25 miles to school. You know you did not do it. But you want them to appreciate the hardships that you went through, got them where they gonna go, So you don't want them to forget those things. Very good job. Any other comments on everyday use?
No, question.
All right.
So how do you think the house burned down?
Yeah, that's a good thing to know. What do you think?
I never thought about it the way you thought about it when you said it. Like, I never thought it could have been you, but now that you bring it up and then people were calling out the passages in the story, it leads to her.
Because she's standing back behind the tree looking at him, and washing, and the mama says this, the mother, she's still the whole time when they're, coming out, she's still like, not sad.
Low key, Maggie might really know that Dee did it though. And that's
She
why
may
she
know,
kind
but
of
she hates it. Even she does, they suspicious. Because the mother does, and Jean, like, you burned down, you could have killed me and all that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just, I had a visceral reaction to this, just an instinctive reaction, especially one passage in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, it's the conversation that. I'm sorry.
What might happen if we knew? How would we feel if we knew for sure she burnt down the house?
Yeah, I hate that.
Well, I already do.
Yeah,
I do.
Kind of have a negative feeling about her too.
Yeah, but like that hatred would go more, like your emotion would go deeper into how much
Like right now, you hate her, but if she burned the house, you have a more support.
Because then you understand who did that to
your sister, your family.
If they
your
knew
hard
for
work.
a fact that she did it, I wonder if she would have sent her off to get an education.
Yeah, and maybe the whole story would have turned out different. She'd have been in trouble and maybe not gotten educated and not gotten a whole lot of things may have changed if they knew for sure. If it was a definite thing that she had done that and jeopardized everybody's life. And the story wouldn't have ended, like you said. She may not have gone to go to college. And the townspeople supported her and helped her get to college. Would they have done it had they known she turned the house over? No, they're not going to do that. Well, you think Mama was right? Maybe Maggie could have preserved the quilts and preserved history if Maggie had got them. Dee would have preserved the quilts. And was it a bad thing that she wanted to basically preserve them or keep them so they couldn't be used anymore? Because she didn't want them to be used. She thought they might mess them up.
I think that the mama would have if it would have been approached differently instead of briefly.
And tell me what you say a little more about that. I think that's good.
Like, I don't know, like everything about Dee has been rude and like she higher power according to her. So I think Mama would have been more approving and she would have been like, well, I think we should preserve this. It's like a family heirloom, like to show our history of what we did. Instead of just saying, well, they shouldn't be used, they should be shown off to people instead in a rude way. It's the way you approach someone that makes them think differently.
Maybe Dee could have took the quilts out of the state of Georgia and showed them off to other people. I said, this is where I came from.
I think she's too selfish for that. She would have took all the credit.
I think she showed selfish too. I think she showed very, very selfish, and not, and wanting everything for herself and not leaving anything back. But
Well, do you think she'd have sold them?
that is a point. What do y'all think?
I think she
Probably.
could have because I think she might have had that thought of that's money in my pocket.
To a museum or something or other, rather than just displaying them.
I think that the mom really didn't care either way or the other. She just used this moment to kind of like teach her a lesson.
And she did end up doing that. Yeah, she did. She did. So, Haley, what do y'all think? I'll give y'all a chance too about, are you hearing me well?
Yeah,
Are you talking about the quilts?
yeah.
Yeah, what was wrong with what Matt D wanted to do?
Well, the quilts were like a part of their everyday life, so I mean, taking it away from that, like everyday use, it would have kind of ruined the history, I guess, of them, which in a way is what she was trying to do, what Mama was trying to prevent. So.
I think like the quilt was like their heritage, where like she would use it every day and it would get worn down, and then she would just repair it herself and add to it. And if Dee just took the quilts, then it would stop. And like each generation, they add on to the quilt, but they would stop doing that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, let me ask this then. How many of your parents have quilts that were made back in the day? And I display mine. I don't, does anybody use them?
My mom does.
My grandmother still does.
Yeah, the older generation still does. I have a quilt that my mother-in-law's friend, and she worked for them for years when she was raised up. So she's probably 200 years old, but or at least 150 years old now. But she made it for my baby girl by hand, stitch by stitch, specifically for my baby girl. My baby girl is 30 now, but so it's been 30 years ago she made it. But she was old. She was 90 something when she made it. My mother-in-law asked her. She wanted her to have a memory of her, and I will not let her use it. I just won't let her use it because I'm afraid she's gonna mess it up, and then we won't have that memory. And I think about this story all the time, that I should have let her use that. She made it for her to use, for her baby crib and for her bed when she was a little girl. And I just never let her. It's displayed over her chair in her bedroom, but nobody ever touches it. And if anybody went to put it on, I would just go, ah! And I've got several quilts like that my mother-in-law, had that were handed down to me. And I just cannot make myself do it. Is it wrong? Is that maybe what Dee was doing?
I think Dee had more of an ill intent because she didn't care about that at the beginning. She didn't, like they said, when she went off to college, she offered her one of those quilts. She didn't care about it because it wasn't stylish. It didn't matter that it was sentimental. Right. So, why does she want to display them now? Or, I just think it's a superficial reason. It's not, from her heart.
Yeah, I love your term sentimental. Does Dee have any sentiment?
I don't think so. Because when she didn't get her way, she just stomped off to her husband and then come back.
Yeah, she just got on man, left him, and wanted to speak to him and all that kind of stuff. She didn't show to me any sentiment, did she?
She stomped off like a little brat. Yeah. I mean, put it in layman's terms, I guess.
I guess that's why I probably used the quilt, because when my father died, it was 3 quilts in his signature, and I don't know where they came from. So they're old. You can look at them and tell they're old, but I use them. I wash them, and my grandkids love them. Right. So I guess that's the reason, because I don't think it's I don't know where they come from, actually.
Right. Now, my sister, she crocheted. Crocheted me, everybody, every grandchild, or every one of her nieces and nephews, she crocheted. When they went to college, she gave them a hand crocheted Afghan. Now my sister died when she was 50. She just had turned 50. of cancer. And I use and treasure that Afghan all the time, and I use it all the time. And I say to my children, you know, I want them to use it, but I want them to be careful and take care of it. So, but, you know, I just get in a panic if I see them discard it in the floor some kind of way. Like, don't you care that her heart for years, she's not even here? Guilt trip. You know, and all her many of thousands of hours she took to crochet for you, and you're gonna throw it at the floor. Disregard it as if it means nothing, you know. But it's funny how different people react to those kinds of things. So I don't know. I saw Dee a little bit. I tried not to see her all negatively, even though the author portrayed her that way. I tried to see maybe she had a motive to preserve it as opposed to, you know, using it all up and having nothing to show family in the long run, you know, I don't know. But I did see that little part of it. All right, any other comments about everyday use or anything that you noticed, any of the questions from the story, from the discussion board that maybe you're not sure about? All right. So what do we get as the well, let's end this one before we start the next one. So our ultimate message here is what?
Definitely.
Yeah, and treasure, you treasure roots, you treasure you can rise above them, but you just, I got that it was okay, good she got educated.
Yeah,
and she accomplished those great things. But her whole demeanor, but she became something she wasn't in the name of being educated. And just because you're educated doesn't mean that you become another person.
That's a clash, like with my family, when people want to become Muslim, or they leave their Christian. Like I have one who left from Christian and calls himself the Israelite now, so it causes turmoil in the family a lot. It does that.
Yeah, because of her raising and the hardships and the things are completely forgotten, and you're almost turning your back on family. It's almost like that. What you feel like? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what's just you're gonna struggle with, and then just thinking you have to turn your back on your family, or you are turning your back on your family, and then you're indoctrinated not to turn your back on your family, even though you need to turn your back on your family.
Goes both ways, doesn't it? Right?
They don't feel like it's turning their back on their family. They feel like it's more educating you. That's come up to a point, to where it's like
right.
they're acting like we don't know something that they do.
Right, that they're better because now they're in touch with their
fantasy side,
whatever side that they feel like that's Muslim or whatever side. And I get different people do different religions, and I say the opposite your families, because everybody has every kind of religion in their family,
I was raised Baptist, and I'm married to a Catholic. How does that work?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've got Seventh-day Adventists, I've got Mormons, and what's the one that goes to church on Saturday?
Seventh-day Adventists.
Yeah, Saturday, Mormons, and all Lutherans, and all kinds of different things. Catholics, all kinds of things are roots families. But you can't, deny the roots, and they're in that particular part. She's more about the roots.
They branch off somewhere, but you still have your roots.
That's right. There you go. Good point. Way to end it all. All right, good job. All right. So now let's go over to the one. This one's a little bit more difficult to read, get into. So we'll see.
The Worn Path follows an elderly African-American woman by the name of Phoenix on a difficult journey from the country to the city. Phoenix knows the way by heart because she's taken the trip many times to get medicine for her grandson. She faces many obstacles along her path, including falling into a ditch and encountering a white huntsman who first seems friendly, but as she speaks, he reveals racist views. He not only points a gun at her, but also tells Phoenix she should not finish her journey. After demonstrating great courage to overcome that and other obstacles, Phoenix continues her journey and arrives in the city of Natchez. I didn't even know. Yeah. When she arrives at the doctor's office, she is greeted with disrespect by an attendant who refers to her as a charity case, but Phoenix remains calm and ignores the humiliation to get the medicine for her grandson to relieve his suffering.
The characters are Phoenix Jackson, the White Hunter, the nurse, the grandson, the children she sees, and the attendant. The flat characters would be the White Hunter and the grandson, the attendant, the nurse, and the only round character is Phoenix Jackson, which we still don't really know much about her. We don't even find out why she has taken her journey till the end of the story. The setting is in southwestern Mississippi in the 1940s. It's December around Christmas time. It's cold and frigid in the middle of winter. The social conditions are the time of oppression for African Americans, and the mood and atmosphere is hopeful yet depressing because, you know, she's so hopeful that she's going to get there, but it's like she keeps going finding all these trials. The conflict, well, the point of view is third person limited. The conflicts.
And why third person limited in this case? Because Kansas was asking about the other one. Third person because it's not about the author.
Yeah, it's not about the author.
And why is it
we
limited?
only know certain little details. We don't know everything.
We only know basically what that character knows. That she's got to go to town. We don't know why she's going. We just know.
We don't know any backstory.
We just know exactly what that character is experiencing. We don't know what anybody else is really thinking. Just her. Very good.
The conflict of the story is Phoenix's path and the urge to keep going. She stumbles upon many obstacles that stand in her way. The story is also marked with conflict of racism. It's man versus self because, you know, it's her internal fight to keep going. Man versus nature because she faces natural obstacles on her path. And man versus society because of the racial injustice at that time. The symbols, universal symbols. I read the snake, the symbol of temptation, and also I didn't write it down, but her name Phoenix. You know, the bird is like I guess strong or whatever. I don't know how to explain
The rise
it.
of the Phoenix?
Yes.
No, it's
yes.
down Go ahead.
The constructed symbols are the obstacles on her path, which symbolizes her rough life, and the steep hill, which symbolizes things holding her back, and the journey itself, which is the path of life. The irony in the story is when Phoenix arrives to the store and forgets why she's there. She gets there after all of her the hard journey, and then she can't even remember why she took the journey.
Now let me tell real quick, this says, it's a long-lived bird that is cyclically regenerated or born again. It's associated with the sun. A phoenix obtains new life by arising from the ashes of its predecessor. So I guess each trip that she takes, it's a new birth, it's a new life. And then she gets, by the time she gets back, she's worn out.
Mm-hmm.
It takes her a whole year. She does this how many times? Once a year?
Yeah, I think it's like once a year.
Once a year to get the medicine that you need. Okay?
It should be. The thesis or the main idea, one of the themes is persistence and overcoming hardships. On her path, she faces many obstacles, but she does not let them hold her back. And also, like the racial injustice at the time that she faces. I read when I was reading, you know, other people's analysis. She sees a scarecrow that scares her, and I read that it can be interpreted as like a young man.
Right.
But that's what I saw.
Lots of things came in her path, obstacles that could have swayed her, made her turn back.
But she kept going.
And they tried everything they could almost to make her turn back, but she stayed firm onto her goal. Yeah, very good.
Can you go to the next page? The last one? Yeah. Thanks. Okay, I already went over the characters.
Yeah.
Where is? Yeah, and the settings. The inciting incident, I really didn't know. I just, you know, the beginning of her journey.
Probably the first obstacle thing she comes to It's
I think it's
what,
like a thorn bush or
Yeah,
something.
and then we get like, okay, this is going to not be easy.
Not an easy journey.
Yeah, so then she comes more, the more she gets on. So
Yeah.
her first real obstacle, I would say, starts the hardships of the journey.
Some rising actions when like a dog attacks her
Yeah.
and she falls into the ditch. When the man comes and points a gun at her. And another thing is when she was going, like she started seeing things. Like she started hallucinating and basically seeing children running around her. The climax is when she finally receives the medicine and we finally know why she took the journey, because this whole time we didn't understand why she was, going through all of this just to get to the city. Some of the following actions would be when she receives the medicine, and the attendant actually gives her money, and she uses that money to buy her grandson a windmill. I didn't really know any of the moments, like the moments of final suspense.
But we didn't really have so
Yeah, I
much
didn't
of
really-
that where she was tested. However, the very last test was when they weren't going to let her in. They didn't know who she was, and they didn't. And then we finally say, "Oh, that's so and so,"
Yeah, and the
let
nurse
her
comes
in
out and says that.
and give her the money or whatever. So that's probably the last test. She's made it all the way to the city. And she struggled through the hard path with all the brush and all the snakes and all the people and then she gets to the city. There's a whole different life when she gets to the city. But what happens to her when she gets to the city? What's her demeanor?
She's tired. She forgets.
Totally forgotten why she's there.
Yeah, she can't even remember what she was going for. She's completely worn out. She has no recollection. What in the world am I here for? She made that path. And then, somebody recognizes her, and says, whatever, I think she went to wherever she went. I can't remember.
And she said this is like Aunt Phoenix or something. And
Yeah,
basically explaining that she comes in here and gets the medicine for her grandson.
Yeah, and so they lead her on through to the end path where she's got to go, and they give her money too.
I put the resolution as she heads out the door to embark on her journey home on the same path she'll walk many more times. So she goes out the door, and it's like basically she gets her strength back, and that she's got to face it all over again.
That's right, all the way back home to get that medicine to where the grandson is. So that's what her life is about, is tending to him and all
And I
that.
think the story said like he swallowed lye or something.
And burned
that's
all his insides
that's
and
why
stuff.
he was sickly. And they kept telling her that, he was a lost cause. But that's another theme, basically, family. She was staying strong for her grandson, and she was embarking on all of these challenges so he could be comfortable and okay.
And still,
Yeah.
in the end, we get him a present back.
Yeah, there's a lot of themes that are in it. That's one thing I noticed.
That was good.
You can
I'm
take
glad.
it
Well,
on.
you can go on. I thought y'all would not get that. Well, maybe y'all would, but the rest of us will go like, well, that thing. Yeah, family, hardships, racism, sexism.
And then another thing I read that it could be like religion, like basically I didn't get this when I was reading it, but basically her faith in God and taking her on, and like when she falls or something about like she lifts her hand up to God, basically saying that she knows that
She keeps her spirit, her spiritual part, her spiritual goal to get to do what's right, to get to the end. That is good. I hadn't thought of that.
Don't you think the silver coin, the nickel means something?
Yeah,
Like
that
luck or something, I don't know.
What would you think? What about the coins? What do they represent? Why are they even in there? First person who gives the coin is
the hunter.
Well, actually,
he drops it and she picks it up.
She goes, "Oh, God
Yeah,
sent this to me." She
It's like
gives
she's rewarded for looking after her grandson.
and being resilient to keep going.
Right.
Don't let him. He tried to sway her because he was trying to scare her, trying to turn her back. Had a gun. He was trying to be all big and bad and scare her. She didn't let that stop her. She just went, "There you go. Thank you very much." He was in her path to give her maybe even a spiritual way. That person came in to give that to God and give her that money. I hadn't thought about that from a spiritual aspect.
I was looking for her to give it back to him, but then she never did.
And she
And
just
I
went,
was
"Thank you,
thinking
mentally,
at the end,
hey."
he realized she had money.
Yeah, and then what about the end coin? Why would she give him a coin?
The attendant.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She basically felt sorry for.
She knows she makes that trip.
Yeah. So it's basically like she's like, here's some money. You know, it's Christmas. Go buy something.
Why don't they go pick her up? They know she takes that trip all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or take the medicine to the little boy.
You know she's coming every single time. Yeah, why don't they? Well, of course, that was probably back way in the days where they wasn't transportation. There was.
Well, I wonder how much the nickel was worth, say,
Yeah.
in
Good
today's
point.
money.
Yeah.
That would give me more of
Yeah, nickel. You should go see a movie for a nickel.
Oh, yeah.
And buy a soda and a drink, and you all have a good day for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't born in that time, but my mama was. She always talked. She got a Pepsi and a moon pie for a nickel.
There you go, move by.
My mama says that all the time. I went to the movies for a nickel. I'm like, good Lord, what nickel is that? What's $50 to go when I go today?
Yep.
You gotta buy ice, got food, and
The South Hill little theater's not bad. $5 to get in, and you get, you know, your little combos, like $20 for 2 people to go in there.
well, that's not too bad. All right, that was very good. Good. So let's talk a little bit about where was I on my little questions? Haley, do y'all have Pat, do y'all have anything to add before I start asking a few little questions?
Go ahead with your questions.
Is Phoenix a hero character? And what would make her, what would classify her as a hero or not? Is this a duty or is this a heroic deed that she's accomplished?
I think you could look at it as it's her duty as the grandmother of her son, but you know, she didn't have to, you know what I mean? So I feel like, you know, she is kind of a hero to embark on such a journey just to make her grandson comfortable. Because the medicine doesn't really heal him, it just makes him comfortable.
Right.
But
And, yeah, she could have let that go years ago and he could have gone on and passed away, but her life is to, so her journey to get the medicine, most heroes go through in the hero mythologies and those kinds of things, they go through a journey. And then there's always there's always trials and tribulations that they go through as the hero character in all mythology, Greek mythology, and all that. So her actions on this journey are very symbolic of what hero characters do in literature, particularly in Greek mythology. So the author could have played on that hero. She's gone through this journey. She's gone through the fire. She's hit a lot of obstacles. She's still finally accomplishes her goal and everything is happy ever after. So that works out. So yeah, so she's even though she's not a hero to start because she's an old lady. She's not spry. You wouldn't consider her to be heroic because of her age, because of the times the hardships that she's endured. Because remember, she wasn't gonna let that man change her because why? He wasn't gonna affect her. Why?
Because she had a bigger goal in the end.
Yeah, and didn't she say something about she's been with worse
off gunfire, close by, worse off of gunfire,
running
close by, or
slave.
something like that.
In other words, the white man has chased her or something where she's been in field. Say it. Go ahead.
It says, no, sir, I seen plenty go off closer by in my day, and for less than what I done, she said, holding upwardly still.
Yeah.
And then he smiled and shouldered the gun. He said, well, Granny, you must be 100 years old and scared of nothing.
Yeah. So she shows, too, that she's experienced a lot of hardships, and they have not waylaid her and have not scared her and have not ended her life. She's fair.
Like he maybe scared that black dog away, but he's not going to scare this
me. I got
two black lady off.
I
mean, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and another thing, we'll talk about since we mentioned that. Would the story have been different if it were, let's say, a black man on the journey or a white woman on the journey? If it was any other race or sex of person, might have been different, and how and why? Let's say first, if it was a black man making this journey. Since let's take race first, sex first before race.
It probably went the same way. Do you think the hunter would have helped
Yeah.
helped him along because he was male? Probably not because of the color of his skin. But if he was a white male and he was laid there,
Here, get on my horse. I'll take you to
he would have helped. You know, and took them like you said.
Because remember our
on
setting.
Whatever transportation.
Our setting's important.
And if it was a black male, I think, you know, the hunter wouldn't have shouldered his gun. He probably would have shot him right on sight. I mean, just cause. I mean, you know, that time, I guess.
Or called him a lot of names.
Yeah, exactly.
Like boy or something. You know, you can imagine that he would verbally abuse. He didn't necessarily verbally abuse her, but it was abusive.
Yeah,
Because he was like threatening and teasing her and, you know, put up with his gun, you know, trying to be all like, but not mean.
If it was a black male, he might have thought he was up to no good and getting ready to rob somebody or.
Right, could have thought that way too, because of the whole thing. Yeah, what if she were a white woman now? Let's go from that perspective now to the race as well. If she was a woman that was white, an old white lady going through them.
He would have escorted her down, I think.
She probably wouldn't have been traveling on foot to begin with.
And why? That's a good point.
Yeah, because at that time,
In that setting,
Right.
they had more privilege.
Yeah, it could have been an older black woman older white woman that, you know, was not necessarily well off and she was going to the part. But and even then, I don't think some of the things would have been obstacles to her that they were for Phoenix. So the obstacles, and maybe she would have been frightened because she wasn't accustomed to being treated that way too, and that might have frightened the white lady off. As
she
opposed
probably
to
wouldn't have been as strong because she hadn't dealt with that kind of hardships.
That's right, because she lived through a lot of hardships, so she's much more enduring. I've got this boy, my son is, I've got to get there. So that's a good point too, yeah. What were we saying before you jumped over that? Let me ask another. Any comments on peaceful? Sometimes the people are nice to her though. Sometimes the people are mean and sometimes they're just kind of impatient. Yeah, why the range of how she's treated? Why such a range of treatment there?
I think it's the individual she comes in contact with and how their character is, or how they see, or their perspective of her. I don't know.
Well, the man was snippy, but the lady that gave her the money at the end, I think it's got something to do with gender.
And also the lady who helped tie her shoe before she went in to the place. Yeah.
I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, because of that journey, like obviously she probably is run down and stuff.
Say it again, Haley.
A lot of people feel for her because of like, you know, they see her on that journey, coming out of that journey, and people who know, like, that's what she does.
Right? Yeah. They're more compassionate. Some, I guess, belief system, how they were raised. Some people kind of hard. People are busy. They're in the city now. When she's in the country, things were a little bit different than the city. They're two whole different worlds she's gone into. So think about that as well. So it could have something to do with the two worlds.
Yeah.
Of
And how
country,
old,
city.
and how old she is. I feel like if she was younger, people wouldn't take as much pity on her, or
That's a good point.
Or have more patience.
Yeah, that's very good. That was really good. Any other comments to add to The Worn Path by Eudora Welty? Eudora Welty, did anybody do her as an author? She's really great. I love her stories. If you haven't read anything else by Eudora Welty, she has some good stuff, so you might want to. Good job. Thanks, everybody. Good job, girls. Wonderful. I love that top. That's the cutest as everything. How about you?